Hello friends, a very warm welcome to the lesson 6 or session 6 on environment. In the previous 5 lessons, the goal have been to make you understand basic and fundamental concepts of environment. So that when you read even NCRT, geography, or even when you go through your daily grinding of newspaper, you are able to make a sense. Similarly, even if you are solving the previous year questions, or even you are doing mock papers through telegram groups, or even trying to make understand of your passion with respect to what you can understand about environment, they are very helpful. I have already suggested that you must make your own short notes, must try to internalize the basic concepts. And it is in this same series today we are going to talk about very important, very crucial, especially for the prelims. At least two questions are possible from this area: biotic communities. We will discuss about community ecology, communities, niche, and most importantly, bio indicators. So let's start with confidence, clarity, and happiness, which is our goal. Let's first see communities. So all the living entities of an ecosystem, they form a single, always remember, single biotic component. The community, or it is called biotic community. So all the organisms of a community living together, they share same habitat. They also influence each other's life directly or indirectly. So you can take example of human beings, you can take examples of herbivores, you can take example of certain other species, or same is true for certain type of forests. Now, when this happens, they have reached a survival level within a given radiant energy. Okay, please remember, within a given radiant energy, then only they can survive. Now, what we can say, the community is any assemblage of populations of living organisms in a prescribed area of habitat. It is not the whole biosphere. You can say metaphorically whole biosphere is one community, but there are so many communities in biosphere. Because community must have certain characteristics or certain attributes. First is co-occurrence of species. Second is the reoccurrence of the group of same species together. And third is homeostasis. Homeostasis or self-regulation. Now all these three features of co-occurrence, recurrence and homeostasis, they are very much essential when you speak of anything as a community. As we are discussing, we have to understand that community is a larger unit than population, and it is having many characteristics that are not found in its constituents. So what are the constituents of a community? Organisms and the populations. That means communities may have a wide range of sizes. It may range from a small patch of land or water body to extensive forests. So you can see the domain of community. Now think about how Environmental Protection Act or even Water Pollution Act or even for that matter India's wildlife or even schedules or even National Tiger Conservation Authority or even for elephants or even for ghadials or even for dolphins, what we speak about. Minor communities are greatly influenced by inputs from adjacent communities. That is very true. While the major communities are relatively independent. So what is happening at the hotspots in India, whether it is Western Ghats, whether it is Himalayas, or whether it is Silent Valley and so forth. Because the major communities are self-sufficient in their habitat. So communities differ from place to place, that we agree, and at the same place at different times. So this is how communities are there in terms of wildlife and in terms of environment. India is an amazing and what we can say a very diverse landscape. That is why every year question comes up, whether it is in terms of wildlife sanctuaries, whether it is in terms of tribals, whether it is in terms of certain kind of species. You have to understand that. Now, what are the characteristics of a community? So like population, community has a series of characteristics. Why we say so? Because one is species diversity. So various species of plants and animals, they are going to live in a community and they are exhibiting species richness, the keyword here, and diversity, another keyword here. So they are both rich. That means they had a great complexity in their formation and they are having diverse features. So the study of species diversity is an essential component of community study. That is what the Bombay Natural History Society do. That is why birds, when we speak about the bird areas in India, that is why question comes up on migration of birds, question comes up on, a certain kind of other conventions. And even for that matter, question comes on Great Indian Bustard or question comes on Run of Kutch. That is why they come up. So for animal communities, a study of age structure and growth pattern is important. While for plant communities, floristics, study of taxonomy, life forms such as herbs, shrubs, climbers, and tree are important. For example, Kurinji flower, which is coming once, blooming in once in 12 years. You look for other examples and you will get from India. Please make to a list. So seasonal changes occur in appearance of plant structure and growth. That is true. And we say periodicities, that is what it is called, and phenology. That means seasonal succession in natural communities are also significant parameters. So just visualize that it is not a static thing. And that is why species diversity is an important part. Similarly, growth, form and structure. So the type of the community is described by major categories of growth forms. What are growth forms? Trees, shrubs, herbs, mosses. So they are all divisions. These different growth forms determine stratification or the vertical layering of the community. That means from top to bottom. Same kind of species. There might be difference in their growth patterns, but they are all belonging to the what we can say vertical stratification. Dominance, certain species may dominate because they are exerting a controlling influence by virtue of their size, their numbers, or maybe their activities. So they are called ecological dominants or dominant species. Do make a list of the Indian such species in different forests, whether it is Bengal. You will find the kind of forest we have in Bengal is different from what we have in Rajasthan and Gujarat. And even within Maharashtra, we have a different kind of dominant species, and same is true for South India, and same is true for Northeast. Relative abundance will come into picture. Different species of population existing in a community in a relative proportion. Relative proportion. In what proportion they are there? Relative abundance. And trophic structure, who is going to eat whom. So the feeding relations, we have read about it. Feeding relations of species in the community will determine the flow of energy and materials from plant to herbivores animals, from herbivorous animals to carnivorous animals. So these are all very, very fundamental and basic aspects. Once you have a clarity on these ideas, you are better able to approach the questions. You are better able to understand the demand of the questions. Now let's see after what is community. Now let's see what are the classification of communities. They are done by different ecologists from different viewpoints. So in terms of general growth, composition, shape, vegetation, organisms associated with them, and community may be classified as, for example, forests, deserts, grasslands, tundra, and so on. So this is one way to classify. Another way, if we say like what is the amount of water in the habitat. So hydrophytic, that means predominantly aquatic. Mesophytic, that is moderately moist soil. Xerophytic, that is dry conditions. To make a list of what kind of animal and bird species you can bring it here. Communities growing in conditions of abundant light are called heliophytic, and those growing in the shade are called skyophytic. So we have divided all the species, we have divided all the communities according to certain kind of characteristics. So Clements recognized that the fact that the plant communities are not always the same at any place. They are not always the same at any place. That means they are different. So one of the process that is the process of change, which are called serial communities, and other are called stable or climax communities. So this is one division. So the global community is an enormous mass of life, that we agree. It is comprising all the plants and animals of the world. The global community can be further divided into continental communities, oceanic communities. So there is a great variability in climatic factors, and exhaustive study is very important in vast areas, but it is impossible. So you can't study completely what is happening in the Amazon forests, what is happening in the Great Barrier Reef. So it is very much difficult. Therefore, communities are often studied as a biotic province. They are studied as a biotic province. So as we said, the one there are certain kind of communities which are undergoing a process of change. That is what we call sterile communities. Another may be stable. That is what is called climax communities. That means no more changes possible there. So biotic province can further be defined as a considerable geographic area. Considerable is the key word here, over which the climate is relatively uniform, agreed, though often modified by physiographic features. It can be modified by physiographic features and it has to be sustained. So biotic province obviously is an abstract community. So based on ecological criteria, the associations are studied as concrete communities, because when we think about biotic community, it is very, very abstract. What all you will bring. So in order to make sure that we can understand, for our own understanding, for our own classification, we study them as a concrete community. What is concrete community? So concrete word comes in, that means specific area. That means you can observe directly. That means assemblage of plants and animals. That means they are exactly existing over there. That means ecological data can be collected. And a stand is the largest concrete community. For example, a particular forest. So you can say evergreen forest in Andamans. Or for example, a river. That means a river Rhine, or for example, river Darling, or for that matter, river Brahmaputra. Swamp or marshy land. That means the largest floating, freshwater lake in India. Or meadow or a lake, Nainital Lake. It can be observed, it can be measured, it can be worked upon by an ecologist. So microstand is a small localized area within that stand. Small localized area within that stand. So what we say, Yamuna in Delhi. It will be it will be in one way you can say the microstand. Thus each individual plant or animal with its associated parasites, epiphytes and common seals. We have already discussed these words in our previous lecture. So please try to remember. They are the good examples of microstands. So community ecology is linked with biogeography, as we said, and biogeography is linked with global change. So this is a kind of a cyclical process, and it is very important to appreciate and understand this. Now let's see what is the composition of community. Composition of community comprises following parameters: size. Composition definitely brings size into picture. It may be large or small. Number of species. It may be abundance. It may be varying greatly sometimes. Dominance. In each community there occurs diverse species. All these species are not equally important, but there are only a few overtopping species which by their bulk and growth modify the habitat and control the growth of other species of the community, thus forming a kind of a characteristic nucleus in the community. So one is having more influence on the others, and one is forming a kind of a core part, or a characteristic nucleus part. These species are called dominants because they are not just dominating, they are making sure others are also surviving. Generally, in most of the communities, only a single species is particularly conspicuous, or you can say dominant. In such a way, one can say that the community will be named after such dominant species. For example, spruce forest community. In other cases, there may be more than one dominant community. For example, oak hickory forest community. So don't get confused if you see one more than one name in context of making certain kind of a community uh, visible, or understanding. Community dominants sustain the full impact of climate or the environment. But as I said, the modification of the climate or the impact of this for other organisms within the community is maybe by tempering light, maybe by moisture, maybe by space and other conditions. So only those organisms that find these modified physical conditions tolerable, they will be only able to exist within the community. Furthermore, dominants are ordinarily the most prominent species in the community, and they are making up for the greatest mass of living material. That's what's called biomass. And they are serving as a major source of food substrate and shelter for animals that are present. So in a forest community, we say trees are dominant. And that is why whole system works in such a way. So they also decrease, community also decrease light intensity, they increase relative humidity, they intercept precipitation, they monopolize most of the moisture and nutrient in the soil, they decrease the wind velocity, and they furnish shelter and food for animals. So what? So please think how much important role they are playing. If they are going to increase light intensity, then what will happen? There will be decrease in flora and fauna. If they are going to decrease relative humidity, drought conditions will step in. If they are not intercepting precipitation, then growth will not be there. If they are not going to, monopolize most of the moisture and nutrients in the soil, no new growth will happen. If they are going to increase wind velocity, then havoc will be there. If they are not going to furnish shelter and foods for animals, then wildlife sanctuaries, or for that matter, uh, uh, when we talk about national parks in India, when we talk about biosphere reserves, they all will suffer. They all will suffer irreparably and immensely. Let's take another examples from the prelims examination. Grasses are going to play the similar role, though less conspicuous than the one which we discussed. So the role in prairie communities. Sedges, rush and cattails in marsh communities. Sagebrush in arid habitat of the Great Basin. Mussels and barnacles on the rocky seashore and so forth. So you please look for examples from NCERT, that is physical geography, and you will find other kind of examples also. It is here. See the sagebrush. Similarly, examples of mussels and barnacles and other examples also. So just visualize, because you are going to get questions. You are definitely going to questions, and even the basis of this understanding, you are going to make sure that the question is correct. Similarly, ecological amplitude, the range of environmental conditions which a taxon can tolerate, is called ecological amplitude. The composition of a biotic community in any habitat is dependent upon the frequency of environmental conditions in that habitat and the ecological amplitude of species populations. That means the extremities within which the environment is going to, fluctuate. And the climate and other conditions, whether they are biotic or abiotic, they of a habitat, they are going to determine the type of community which is going to survive and which is going to develop. So when we say that we are breaching we are breaching the limit of 1.5 degrees centigrade, and for the future generations there will be havoc, and the time is changing. It is in such conditions we have to understand the importance of ecological amplitude. We go for hybrid varieties, we go for high yielding varieties, we go for drought resistant varieties. We want to consume less water, we want to make sure that the existing uh, ecological wealth survives. So the structure or the stratification of community is very important, because it reflects a kind of a spatial arrangement of the members of communities. But why stratification is there? It is one of the outstanding general principles of community structure, because organisms are distributed unevenly throughout the biotic community. Why they are distributed unevenly? Because as we just discussed, so many factors are there. The tolerance factor, and it is resulting in stratification. So specific tolerance and adaptation, chemical reactions taking place between the byproducts and physical stratification, other organisms taking up temporary or permanent residence as a result of the direct response to the presence of initial resident. We have discussed in our previous lecture that how one section of species may be forced to migrate, may be forced to adapt. So the stratification in community, it may be horizontal or vertical, and it may be different in aquatic and different in terrestrial habitats. So first we see horizontal stratification. The community may be divided horizontally into sub-communities, which are units of homogeneous life forms and ecological relations. Homogeneous life forms and ecological relations. So the horizontal division constitutes the zonation in the community. Now, the zonation of different distinct vegetational types on a mountain is an example. When you see that there is a mountain, there is a, even when we divide our Indian subcontinent into different agroclimatic zones or even different kind of soils, it is a zonation. So the zonation of different distinct vegetation type on a mountain is an example. Latitudinal as well as altitudinal zonation of vegetation have also been shown in relation with climatic factors. So as you go vertically, you will find there is a zone. As you move horizontally, you will find there is a zone. So you can see the example here, how from top to bottom it is a variation. Bananas, corn, fruits, wheat, rye, potatoes, cattle, llamas. So this is an example. Similarly over here, terrestrial plants, immersed plants, floating plants, and then you have submerged plants, euphatic zone, benthic zone, lemnitic zone, littoral zone. All you have to understand once, and your whole concepts will be clear forever. Three zones of a pond or a lake, if you say littoral zone, pelagic zone, littoral zone here, water surface, open water zone in summers, deep water zone, aphatic zone, photic zone. Compensation depth, photosynthetic is equal to respiration. So what it is showing that how there is a complete scientific and complete there is a complete process. There are different principles involved on the basis of which we can understand different kind of division. So in shallow ponds, zonation is obviously very little because there is little scope, but in the deep ponds and lakes, there may be recognized three zones. Littoral zone, as I just said, lemantic zone, and profoundal zone. So in each zone, organisms will be differing from each other. And further, in case of animal communities of rocky seashore, there are four different distinct zones. Balanus zone, animals such as balanus and patella, which are on exposed rocks, that means on the top. Littoral zone or intertidal zone, that is zone between high and low tides. This habitat developed in the sheltered niche behind loose stones and contain variety of crustaceans and also springtail. Lower on the shore where the tides always flood, they are living beneath the stone, and some annelids and worms like Linus, that is Nermentine worms, and adjacent to low water mark are another kind of species. So that means this is so much complexity within the same zone. And holes and cracks in the rocks are occupied by various annelid worms, crustaceans, small sea cucumbers, and rock-bearing bivalves. Then there are rock pools. That includes those animals which escape direct current of water. You go to any beach, you must have gone. You go to any rocky area where the water is there along with the marshy land, and you will find this. Sandy shore dwelling marine animals, in great part burrowers, such as spinoid or annelids or archenelids and crustaceans. Populations which inhabit this substrata adjust to both sand and mud particles. That is very true. Now this becomes evident in their respiratory adaptations, locomotory, and even feeding behavior. So just visualize that it is not superficial. It is a very fine-tuned process. Vertical stratification, so vertical gradients in environmental factors such as availability of sunlight, because when you see from top to bottom, there will be a different kind of you know division. The temperature, and there is a recognizable stratification in the water bodies also, particularly in the marine ecosystem such as deep water lakes, oceanic region, and the region of open sea beyond continental shelf. So there are two zones: bathyl zone, that is the region of continental slope and rise, that is one, and abyssal zone, the area of ocean deeps. So in terms of light penetration, the ocean region is vertically divided into an upper thin euphotic zone, जहाँ पर light जाएगी, the light compensation zone, and a vastly thicker, permanently darker zone that is called aphotic. Aphotic because there is no light going on there, including bathyl and abyssal zone. So the oceanic region also include two more vertical zones: benthic, that is the bottom one, and the pelagic, that is the whole water body. So please remember these terms. Just make a graphic representation and you will be completely clear with the concept. The community of pelagic zone includes phytoplanktons. They are the producers. Very important. Prelims questions have always been there. Diatoms, dinoflagellates, flagellates, green algae, brown algae, and sargassum are the examples. Zooplanktons, the consumers such as foraminifera, and even annelid worms, swimming snails, jellyfishes. So all the names you did not remember, but you just have to understand. You can, when you go to Wikipedia and just Google it, first two lines will make you understand that what actually they are about. The nectons, these are free swimming marine animals which are essentially independent of water movements. So nectons are consumers such as cephalopods, bony fishes, sharks, sea turtles, whales, seals, and seabirds. Minute organisms that float or swim on the surface of water are called newstones. So benthos are bottom dwellers of benthic environment. They are sessile forms such as limpets, chitons, mussels, oysters, sponges, corals, hydroids, anemones, bryozoans, crabs, lobster, and some echinoderms and flatfish. So you have to understand that there is a whole world beyond and beneath which you have to enjoy. See, bioluminescence fish, sunlight zone, twilight zone, and then you have dark zone, you have land, you have trench. Similarly, phytoplanktons are there and zooplanktons are there. Vertical stratification in communities are also observed in terrestrial ecosystems. For example, in a grassland community, euphotic zone consists of herbaceous stratum consisting of grasses and other herbs as producer, and rodents, cattle, and insects as consumers. Very true. Then you have subterranean stratum, that is consisting of different layers of soil containing litter, humus, mineral fraction, soil, plant roots, rhizomes, and organisms such as bacteria, fungi, protozoa, microarthropods, insect larvae, pupa, and oligochaetes and mollusks. So that means there is a division here also when we are speaking about the vertical one. See, it is very important to remember and memorize these whole chart so that you are able to understand what kind of divisions are there. In forest community, the vertical stratification is most complicated. Why? Because there are five divisions: subterranean subdivision, forest floor, herbaceous vegetation, shrubs and trees. In some tropical rainforests, three or more subdivisions exist on the forest floor. Three or more subdivisions, such as leaf litter layer, and then you have partially decomposed leaf litter layer and a humus layer. So there are three layers. So based upon the light and the relative humidity, how much light is coming up, what is the relative humidity, we find stratification in above ground parts, because they are on the surface, they are on the soil, top of the soil. Ecological potential of a zone or strata determines the distribution of community. That is very true. Microbiota, that means bacteria, algae, fungi, protozoans, rotifers, nematodes and mites, they will decide. Similarly, mesobiota, nematodes, centipedes, millipedes, spiders, they will also decide. Macrobiota, that means plant roots, earthworms, toads, lizards, snakes, rodents and large mammal including men will decide. So, and there is also classification by Fenton when he says that these communities according to their feeding habits, such as camophagous, ectophagous, entophagous, predators and shelterers. Do just Google it and identify examples and more understanding. So you see here we have given an example over here how subterranean subdivision rich in humus, roots of plants, soil, fungi, bacteria. Then you have forest floor coming up, dead organic matter, later fungi, bacteria. Then you have shrubs and then you have trees. So this is the vertical stratification in a complex forest community. Apply this to Indian forest and you have all material in your mind completely. Now when we speak about phanerophytes or phanerophytes, the growing buds of these trees are naked or covered with scale. They are not well protected and they are situated in the upright shoots much above the ground surface. So phanerophytes includes trees, shrubs and climbers, even woody lianas. So phanerophytes are mostly found in tropical region, that means in India also, and decrease progressively from tropical to temperate to polar. Now that's how they are functioning. Similarly, cameophytes, so perennial buds, organs or seeds from phanerophytes to therophytes. I'm just telling you different division. You need not to worry about these technical words. So these plants, the buds are situated close to the ground surface, and these buds get protection from fallen leaves and snow cover. That means they can later on, they can regenerate. So cameophytes commonly occur in high altitudes and latitudes. That's how they need to survive, especially in North America. Hemicryptophytes, mostly found in cold temperate zone, their buds are hidden under the soil surface. Otherwise, they will just dry out. And they protect themselves in soil. In warm seasons, the growth of aerial part is marked, and their shoots generally die each year. Most of the biennial and perennial herbs, including the grasses. Similarly, cryptophytes or geophytes, in these plants, the buds are usually buried in the soil or in bulbs and rhizomes where food is stored to withstand long periods of adverse climatic conditions, freezing and even drying. Cryptophytes includes hydrophytes, and that means buds are remaining underwater, helophytes, marsh plants with rhizomes under the soil, and geophytes, that is terrestrial plants with underground rhizome or tubers. So you see, there are so many nitty gritty and simple logic behind each tree when we speak about human depredation, when we speak about human development in the regions like Uttarakhand. So now you have to speak and think about why we always keep on saying save the environment. Therophyte seasonal plants completing their life cycle in a single favorable season, they remain dormant throughout and the rest unfavorable period of the year in the form of seeds. Therophytes are commonly found in dry, hot or cold environments, that is deserts. This is an example. You see how birds, soil level, birds, phanerophytes, chemophytes, buds, rhizomes, tubers, bulbs, these words we must be familiar with so that we can handle questions in an accurate manner. Life form of animals, if we say, then there have been several attempts to classify the life forms of animals, but no definite system have been resulted as Remene and Krivolotsky went on to try. The major life forms are often they often agree with their taxonomy than do plant, but some life form includes representative from several different taxonomic groups. There is an intermixing. These can be recognized as incrusting forms such as freshwater, freshwater Birozoan, Plumetella, and some sponges, Sponges mean coral forms, including grass, leaves or shrub forms, radiate forms. And there are examples of, coelentrates and echinoderms, bivalve forms, snail forms, slug forms, worm forms, crustacean forms, insect forms, fish, snake, bird, and four-footed forms. These are just an example for you to understand. There is no need to mug it up. Just try to see that even life of animals is not actually divided very clearly. Each of these major types may be divided into narrower structures or behavioral types, and it depends on understanding. So Osborn divided four-footed mammalian forms into the following types that we just see. Aquatic, we know aquatic or swimming. So seals, whales or walrus. Fossorial, that is burrowing. Mole, shrew, pocket gopher. Cursorial, that is running. Deer, antelope and zebra. Saltatorial, that is leaping. Rabbit, kangaroo and jumping mouse. Scansorial, that is climbing. Squirrel, opossum, monkey. And aerial, that is flying bat. So this is how the division is there. Just have an understanding of it and you will be able to do better. Now let's come to very crucial concept of niche. The term niche was first time used by Joseph Green in 1971 to explain microhabitats of California thrashers. It is the ultimate distributional unit within which each species is held by its structural and instinctive limitations. No two species, always remember, no two species in the same general territory can occupy for long identically the same ecological niche. The area of a species or any other taxon refers to the total extent of its geographical range of dispersal, and this can definitely be plotted on a map. So niche is very important. When we say the habitat of a species, it is described in a single word or single phrase is the totality of abiotic factors to which species is exposed in this area. Thus one can talk of marine habitat, coastal habitat, marsh habitat, forest habitat, distributed habitats or even dry habitats. So think about mangroves in Bombay. Think about the salty ranges in Kutch. Think about the coastal region in Eastern Ghats. Think about Northeast. Think about Cherrapunji. Think about deep interiors. There are so many types of habitats. In many cases, however, the habitat of the species is highly specialized. Certain species of leaf miners, for example, live only in the upper photosynthetic layer of the leaves of certain species of plants, while other species they will live in the lower layer, lower cell layer. So these patterns of location are so consistent and that it is clear that the habitats of species are different that they become a kind of a habitat. Subdivision of environment on this scale are commonly called microhabitats. That's what we said. So the upper we can say in case of leaf miners there are two different kinds of microhabitats. The leaf constitutes microhabitat for leaf miners within the total forest, and different cell layers of leaf constitute different microhabitats within the leaf for different species of leaf miners. So habitat is there, microhabitat is there. Condition within the leaves are quite different from the general conditions in the forest that we just discussed. The specific environmental variables in a microhabitat of a population is called microenvironment or microclimate. So the forest is there. Within if forest is a microclimate, then within the forest there is a microclimate. Forest is an habitat. Within forest there are number of microhabitats. So that is why we say the leaf miner fly is an example, and here we are seeing the puncture on the upper leaf surface made by the adult while feeding the laying legs, then mines made by larva on the upper leaf surface, and then you have pupa found in the mines on the upper leaf surface or in the soil, and then finally you have leaf miners fly. Similarly, sawflies, beetles, flies, moths. So whole cycle is there. So for early detection, use sticky traps to monitor adults and check upper surface of young leaves for punctures. This is how one can understand this. So though habitats are microhabitats, as we just discussed, they indicate the places where organisms of a community live. But if one wishes to understand how species fit into fabric of the ecosystem, because it is not enough to just describe creatures habitat or microhabitat, one must understand also the functional role within the community. Functional role means the address of the organism, and address of the organism means when we say that there is a profession also. So habitat is a kind of an address, but when we say how you are fitting into it, then we are talking about its profession. So what it eats, what it does, where it lives, everything about the influences. So the ecological niche is the property, which is the profession of an organism or of you can say of a species. So the ecological niche is the property of the community. It represents the place of species in the formal community structure. In fact, ecological niche is an inclusive term that will be including both physical space and functional role. So physical plus functional is ecological niche. And what is the trophic position occupied by the species? So position in environmental gradient, including other conditions of existence. So three aspects of ecological niche, that is spatial or habitat niche, that means the physical space occupied by the species. Secondly, tropical niche, that is the functional role or the trophic position. And third is the hypervolume niche, that is the position in the whole environmental gradient. Now let's first see spatial niche or the habitat niche. This type of niche pertains to physical space. So O'Neill described as a good example is the distribution of 7 species of millipedes in the forest floor of a maplelock forest. He took an example. All the 7 species occur in the same general habitat, forest floor. All belong to the same basic trophic level. They are all decomposers in their role as detritivores. Each species of millipedes predominates in its own specific different microhabitat. We can also make a list of other important species in context of Indian forests. Spatial or habitat niche. Tropic niche, 2 species, they may be living in the same habitat as we just said, but they occupy different trophic levels, different trophic niches because of the differences in their food habits. For example, 2 aquatic bugs, Notonicta and Coryxa, they live in the same pond, but they are occupying different trophic niches. Why? Because the former is an active predator that swims about grasping and eating other animals, but the later one is feeding on the dying, or you can say decaying vegetation. So both are in the same what we should say, they are occupying the same pond, but they are having a different trophic niche. So same habitat, different trophic niches is an important point to understand. Advantages of niche segregation. The major advantage which organisms gain by occupying different niches is to escape from continuous intense competition. That is the first point. In fact, the niche occupied is favorable to the species physically in furnishing suitable substratum and microclimate. Although many species have the ability to live elsewhere where competition is not involved. And second is automatic segregation of species into its niche through inherited behavior or patterns or imprinting. It is avoiding great expenditure of energy and also loss of time, which would be required if this segregation had to be worked out anew year after year or generation after generation. That means you can only also correlate this example with the way you want to study. So you are also having your own strategy, own niche segregation. Niche segregation or segregation into niches is also avoiding confusion of activities between the organisms in the community, and it is permitting more orderly and efficient life cycle on the part of the each species. Everybody knows what they are supposed to do. So the segregation of each species into different niches permits the occupancy of the area by large number of species, since they will better divide the available resources between them. Similarly, the more distinct the niche of a species, the more it can avoid conflict with its neighbor and lead a life that is orderly, productive and quite efficient. That is what Kennedy said in 1974. So one question definitely can come up in the prelims examination when you can be asked about niche. If your concept of niche is very clear, any kind of example will be inserted. And then if you don't know why a niche segregation is there, why not it is generalized, then you will be able to easily understand and answer it. Community stability refers to the degree of fluctuation in the population size of the population comprising community, and second is the environmental stability, which refers to the fluctuation in the abiotic factors of the ecosystem, as the term is already stating. Now let's go to two more important concepts. Ecoline, so gradient of ecosystem. Ecocline, the gradient of ecosystem, the line of demarcation, that is the boundary line between two communities, is very difficult to identify. And the view of chances of overlapping one community over other is always a possibility. Such demarcation will be conspicuous only when the dominance of the adjacent communities show clear and characteristic differences. So the transition zone between two or more diverse communities is called ecotone. It is a transition zone. The common example of ecotone are the border between forest and grassland. That is one example. The bank of a stream running through a meadow, or between a soft bottom and hard bottom of a marine community. How you will divide? Because it is a transition zone. An ecotone thus represents the condition that are intermediate to the communities which are on the either side of it. So the ecotones may be narrower or they may be wide, they may be extended to large areas, it all depends. The community on the either side of the ecotone, they may have a typical structure, but the ecotone is strikingly different. there may be two uh, big communities, and now this will be ecotone. So the ecotone has a higher diversity, we agree with that. Diversity is not directly controlled by the climate or further fundamental environmental factors, because the migration of individuals of different species populations from the both communities are there. Number of special populations can become adapted specifically to the ecotone, that also we agree. If they go back to one habitat, they will die. Even when both of the major communities are too simple or otherwise unsuited for successful colonization by the species. This potential for the ecotone to act as a habitat for species is found in neither major community, and that is what is called edge effect. A common example of edge effect in action can be seen in those species of the owl which live in or near ecotones between forest and grassland. Now this is very very important to understand. So you see, this is an ecotone, grassland forest ecotone. This is the grassland species are there, deciduous forest species are there. So owls are depending on the forest trees for nesting, and they do their hunting in the grassland where they depend on the field rodents for the food. So one side they are doing something, other side they are doing something. In man-made communities such as agriculture fields, the transition zone or the ecotone between the field and the forest may act as refuge for many animal species formerly found in the plowed area as well as for other plant weeds. So can you say in case of recently in news when Hyderabad there was a huge land, 400, more than 400 acre of land. It was seen as a urban forest. What you will say? What it is that? Can you say that it is an ecotone basically? Because there is a kind of a new, the both sides of it are actually having different kind of habitats, and in between a new kind of system is emerged. So whether you call it ecotone or whether you call it niche or edge, I leave it up to you. Just try to understand. Ecotones of this type are also the prime habitat of many species of insects, games, birds, and mammal. So see again here an example: land ecosystem, aquatic ecosystem. This is the transitional ecosystem. Ecosystem 1, ecotone marshland, ecosystem 2. So ecotones are transition zone between the two adjacent ecosystems that contain some species and characteristics of each one, and also contain species of its own. Edge effect, as I just said, the edge effect is an ecological concept that describes how there is a greater diversity of life in the region where the edges of two adjacent ecosystems are overlapping with each other, such as land, water, forest, and grassland. See, forest and grassland, the edge, which affect this is where the effect is occurring, and typically greater species richness is there. So you see land zone, aquatic zone, and this is the transition zone. So you can just spend some more time in understanding these kind of concepts through graphic representation. Now, factor compensation and ecotypes, before we wind it up, that means organisms are not just slaves to the physical environments, they adapt themselves and modify the physical environment also to reduce the limiting effects of temperature, light, water, and other physical conditions of the existence. Such factor compensation is particularly effective at the community level of the organization. They also occur within the species. Species with wide geographical ranges almost always develop locally adapted populations. They are called ecotypes that have different genetically based tolerance ranges and optima to correspond to the environments within which they normally live. For example, among animals, if you want to see ecotypes, they have reported in jellyfish, European oyster, and other examples like Austria idulis. Frog is another example. Some frogs, for example, undergo rapid development at lower temperature at one extreme of their range of distribution, while other will showing more retarded development rate at higher temperature at other extreme of their ranges. So it is very, very important to understand, because examination may give you certain types of names or may ask you the concept. Ecological indicators, very very important for the examination. Specific indicators and factors, they determine rather precisely what kind of organisms will be present in a particular habitat. So we can turn the situation and judge the kind of physical environment from the organism present. If that organism is present, then we can say such kind of environment is present over there. It is found that certain species of microorganisms, plants and animals have one or more specific requirements, and if these requirements are fulfilled, then only they are present, and they will be only very much limited present, or you can say their distribution will be there only when these requirements are fulfilled. So occurrence of such species in a particular area is indicating spatial habitat conditions, and such species are called biological or ecological indicators, because they are indicating some very specific condition of the environment. Some of the Indian plant species which serve as ecological indicators, which are very important from the examination perspectives, are, we can say, besides plants, certain microorganisms which are serving as ecological indicators. For example, E. coli, a bacterium, is an index organism for aquatic pollution. Species of diatoms indicate the degree of sewage pollution, like of lakes. The presence of protozoans in the soil indicates the petroleum deposits and animal species. The presence of maggots and even chironomid larvae, their increase showcases pollution increase. Burrowing, they may fly. Hexagenia serves as an indicator for the well oxygenated aquatic environment. Immigration and consequent disappearance of certain Indian species such as catla, Lobiogenius, and Rohita and Bata from the Kalindi River near Mansurpur sugar factory, UP, if I say as a case study, it is indicating industrial pollution of water, as these fishes are found to be very sensitive to aquatic pollution when the study was done by Verma sir 1971. Please do have a look and also critically examine this whole list, and you see that what is possible. UPSC can give you examples from uh, these kind of species, not very uncommon ones, but the very common ones, which can help you to understand that uranium, iron, cobalt, gold, copper, hard water, saline water, high lime, and even soil, and even well drained, poor drained, and so on. These kind of divisions you can definitely do with this. So thank you very much for understanding what community is and the kind of indicators which are required, and we have understood a lot more concepts including habitat and also ecotone, econiche, and so forth. These all understanding are going to help you in creating a very comprehensive base, because we have done it in a very comprehensive way. Please do write back your feedback wherever you feel confusion, and everyone is instructed to make your own notes along with the examples so that we can quickly recap it and we can move towards solving questions and getting success. See you in the next session for more concepts and finishing environment in the best possible way ever. Thank you very much for being with us at Unsarkari.